Good afternoon. How's everybody doing? Good. My name is Brooks Vail. I'm from the class of 1988, celebrating our 30th reunion this year. And I have the honor of serving Williams as Director of Alumni Relations. And on behalf of all of us in Williamstown, I offer you a warm welcome home and thank you for making the effort to be here this weekend to connect with classmates, friends, and your college. We have a wonderful opportunity before us this afternoon. We're fortunate to spend the next hour with the three remarkable Eefs seated on stage. By way of introduction, let me say a little bit about each. Jordan Hampton, class of 1987, is our president of the Society of Alumni, a role she has held the past 2 years and will do so until tomorrow's annual meeting. Professionally, Jordan is a pediatric nurse practitioner and program director for the Chelsea High School School-Based Health Center, a satellite clinic of Massachusetts General Hospital, where she does primary care for teens. For Williams, her commitment is equaled by some, but surpassed by none. She is motivated by the desire to keep fellow Eefs connected to each other and their college. Jordan has interacted with countless members of the Williams family and is an open sounding board and positive advocate for all. We've all been the beneficiary of her efforts. Please join me in welcoming and thanking Jordan. It is my pleasure to welcome Maud S. Mandel, who on July 1 will join Williams as its 18th president. Since being chosen for the job by the board in March, Maud has made it a priority to get to know the Williams community, and we are delighted to have her here with us today. Maud's reputation as a leader in higher education precedes her. A graduate of Oberlin College and the University of Michigan, she has built an exceptional legacy over her past 2 decades at Brown University, where she has been a faculty member since 2001 and currently serves as dean of the college. Fueled by a passion for the liberal arts, Maud is a respected teacher and administrator. At Brown, she has held several leadership positions in the history department and served as chair of the Judaic Studies program. As dean, she championed efforts to advance diversity and inclusion, leading a collaborative process with students and staff to open the first center at any Ivy League school to be dedicated to first-generation students. Maud is also an accomplished scholar whose research examines the ways policies and practices of inclusion and exclusion in 20th century France have affected the country's ethnic and religious minorities. An inspiring voice in higher education, Maud shares our aspirations for Williams, and we are overjoyed to have her lead Williams at this point in the college's history. Protek Tiku Majumder became interim president in January 2018, and we're grateful for the vital role he has played for the college in this period of transition. Tiku's service to Williams dates to 1994 when he joined the Williams faculty after earning his BS from Yale and his PhD in atomic physics from Harvard. At Williams, he has taught a wide variety of courses from upper-level physics tutorials to introductory courses for non-scientists. He has supervised more than 60 Williams undergraduates, including 30 senior honors thesis students in his experimental physics laboratory. Tiku has served as chair of the physics department, chair of the faculty steering committee, and since 2010 as director of the Science Center, helping to oversee the design and construction of 2 new science buildings. Please join me in welcoming and offering heartfelt thanks to Tiku. Before turning the stage over to our speakers, we thought we'd offer a reminder of why we're all here. Just 5 days ago, we welcomed the class of 2018 to the alumni ranks. Here are some of the sights and sounds from this year's commencement.
Hi. Thank you. Williams. Perfect.
A and L start over there, and it wraps around Frosh Quad.
Mr. Sheriff, pray, give us order.
This meeting will now come to order.
On behalf of the college, I'd like to open these ceremonies by extending a warm welcome to all of you, students, families, friends, and distinguished guests. We are delighted to see you here and grateful that you have gathered from far and near for this wonderful day.
So go, my friends. March to the sea, but not towards your death. March towards your life, and don't look back. Thank you.
This is my call to action to all of you and my parting word of advice. Try to be a little squishier and watch out for zombies. Thank you.
Find the things you love and pursue them with everything you have. And keep becoming more of the brave, intelligent, inspiring people you are. Thank you.
Do your best. Expect much of yourself, and remember always that true greatness comes not from the battles we win, but the battles we choose to fight.
By virtue of the authority vested in me, I confer upon you the degree of Bachelor of Arts, entitled to all the rights, honors, and privileges appertaining thereto. Congratulations, class of 2018.
Please come back home and visit. Come as you are, in your dirty car and with whatever baggage you have. Don't worry about where you are in your life and what you've done. Come back with all the mixed emotions you might have, returning to any of the places you have called home. It's so great to see you all here today. Thank you so much for coming. I have loved serving as your Society of Alumni president. It's been such a privilege. And one of the biggest honors for me has been getting to know these two fabulous people. I've so enjoyed getting to know Tiku and his family this year, and I'm so grateful that he was able and willing to take on this role and take care of the college for the past 6 months. He's really done an amazing job. And I fell in love with Maud from the first minute I heard about her on the presidential search committee. Seriously. And it turns out to be true. She's warm and funny and so smart, and she stood out from the crowd with her exceptional love of people and community. And I'm so excited for her to lead our college going forward. So in this hour, we're going to spend some time talking about the presidency, the liberal arts, and through these conversations, get to know Tiku and Maud a little bit better. And we'll have time for your questions at the end. So Tiku, you just led commencement last weekend, and after 23 years on the faculty, how was it to be up on the stage leading the show?
Well, it was exciting, a little bit more nervous than usual when I sit in the back row, sit in the back row, although as a faculty member, you start in the back row and you work your way up, and pretty much you realize after a certain point that you've been here a long time. But It was particularly meaningful for me. It's something I'll never forget. And of course, the words are wonderfully scripted and crafted, and from year to year, there's a certain continuity, which is really beautiful. But for me, a real highlight was being able to share the Emeriti citations with my colleagues who I know so well, and many of whom have been my role models in my career at Williams. So that was particularly nice. I loved the baccalaureate service. The whole weekend was really very, very special. So thanks.
Great. And Maud, you were there, able to share the day in the audience. How was it? What do you think of your first Williams commencement?
I had a wonderful time. It was great to be incognito, or sort of incognito. I kept hearing people saying, "Is that the president?" But I was sitting in the audience, and it was really a fabulous, just wonderful testament to the experience of these students before leaving. It's so nice to be at a place where actually every single person can be recognized in the collective space, because where I am right now, we can't do that. But I actually was particularly moved by the retirement ceremonies, by the 13 retiring faculty and the moving testament, Tiku, you gave to them as they were leaving. And just to see so many of them, so many faculty in general up on the stage, and then to have really personal, sort of high-touch goodbyes that really respected what these folks had contributed to the curriculum. It was really very moving. Yeah. And I found your remarks very moving. In fact, you made me cry, so.
Well, I was crying, so I'm glad others did. So you've both spent years as scholars and teachers and then administrators. And when you moved into administration, did you worry about getting detached from the classroom, or do you find continuities? And sort of how does it shift your perspective of your institution?
I would say that it's been very interesting. I've had my share of faculty, I guess you could say leadership and administrative work, but nothing compares to a job like this. However, having been at Williams for 23 years, not an EIF by blood, but someone who's completely adopted this place in every way. Loved teaching here. It's the best job I could ever imagine having. So that's a nice place to start with when you're asked to lead an institution for a short while. And I found that the challenges of this job, while not the same as finding solutions to equations that I might do in the world of physics or that kind of problem solving, the problem solving around the table with really committed people who care about solving complicated things, working together, always thinking about the core mission of the college and the most important things about the institution as a guiding principle, I guess, in problem solving, was really, really rewarding part of this job, and something that I found really intellectually challenging and interesting, and also really very meaningful. So those are some impressions that I have that I maybe would not have anticipated had I not had an opportunity to do this for 6 months.
Yeah, I mean, it's true that you're interacting with students differently than you do in the classroom, although I'm currently serve as Dean of the College at Brown, and I have in that capacity taught courses, so I haven't entirely left the classroom in order to do the job, and I hope to do that here too in this new role. In a sense, the impact you're having is on a broader stage, and that has its own rewards, knowing that what you can do one-on-one in the classroom, you're able to influence the lives and educational experiences of 2,000 or 6,000 or however many people that you're working with. So that has a different kind of reward and impact. It was interesting also as I was listening to you, I was thinking how one of the things that's interesting about institutions of higher ed is they're led by faculty, and faculty approach things from their discipline. So I was listening to you talk as a physicist. I often think, I'm a historian by discipline, and I often will have said that being a historian is the very best discipline for being a college administrator, because historians study change over time, and they're really focused very heavily, many of us are focused very heavily on how institutions change, and understanding how they change, and in fact understanding how slowly they change, which is very useful when you're in higher education. So I think also I have often reflected not just on the role of interacting with students and the way you frame the question and how that changes, but also the way our disciplinary training helps us shape and think about how we go about these roles.
I was going to also add that I think an appreciation as a faculty member, an appreciation or a reminder perhaps all, something that you all know so well as alums of this place, of all the wonderful learning and education that happens outside of the classroom is just a really, really good reminder for faculty members who I think are naturally interacting with students in the confines of classroom problem sets, papers, office hours, and just a reminder that the life of a residential college involves a whole lot more than those hours, and really important parts of that whole experience, educational, social, happen outside of the classroom. Yeah. Has been a really wonderful thing.
And I imagine, since we're here with alumni, interacting with different constituencies in a different way than you would as a faculty member. For example, the alumni body, who as a faculty member you don't necessarily have, I mean, maybe if they had been in your class, but not as a whole.
Sure. Yeah, and that you definitely meet different constituencies and talk to people in different ways. And frankly, you talk to students in different ways. I mean, one of the things about sitting in administration is students come to you when they have a problem they want solved in a way that's quite different than their relationship with faculty. So it not only sitting in these roles not only changes who you talk to, but the conversations that you're having can change pretty dramatically.
And Tiku, I've heard you talk about many times about just an appreciation for the complexity of the operation that, in your current role here as interim, that it just is, astounding how complex it can be.
Right, for sure. I mean, not just actually in the college, working with the senior staff, interacting with students and staff and faculty around all the issues that happen on a college campus like this, but moreover, what it takes behind the scenes, the parts of the college operation that perhaps, again, in my previous role, wouldn't have seen. There's a kind of a division of labor in these kind of institutions, and it's really wonderful to be able to see just how much the work that we think about as being at the center of the Williams experience, faculty and students together in the classroom, in the offices, in the research labs. That kind of interaction that's so special about this place requires so much infrastructure to make happen. And part of that is the support of generations of alums, and part of that is the support of an amazingly large and committed group of staff members who support every aspect of the operation of the college. It's just been a wonderful experience for me to get a window into all of that. I think I will certainly go back to the classroom and my research laboratory and not think about this place again in the same way.
Yeah. I was glad you didn't end that sentence a few words earlier.
Not think about it ever again. So is there something special about doing this work at a liberal arts school? Is there a distinctively Williams approach to the liberal arts, and how would you describe that?
Well, why don't I start, and then I would really be interested to see, especially with Maud's background, both at having gone to a small liberal arts college, but also at Brown. I think it would be really interesting to talk a little bit about that. So, I mean, I think there are a number of things about Williams that are that make it a special place that it shares with other wonderful liberal arts colleges. I happen to think that one of the things that makes...
We're better than all the other ones, by the way.
Okay. I did, yes, right. I happen to think that one of the very special things about this place that really that has been an aspiration for Williams is the way in which it sits in this space of higher education that's not a big university, but actually quite different from almost any other small college in the way it tries to bring faculty members who are both passionate teachers and active scholars to campus so that they can engage with students in this really, I think, deeply meaningful way in which they can bring their passions from their scholarly life into the classroom every day. And at the same time, they can bring students to the edges of the discipline, answering and thinking about questions that are really open-ended questions. Or in my case, as a scientist, bring them right into the lab and work alongside with them. I mean, that is a very special thing, I think, as a student and as a faculty member, and one of the things that makes Williams.
And I think when you say student, it's specifically undergraduate students.
Yes, quite right. I mean, absolutely the fact that when you're working with a faculty member, you are the center of activity. It's not. There's no large team in which an undergraduate might be a part. it's a very, very special thing. And I would say a resource-intensive aspiration.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think one of the great things about American higher education is the way in which we have a range of possible choices where people can go and they find the place that is the right fit for them. And it means that every school thinks it's the best, right? which it certainly is.
We actually are.
Right. Right. But in fact, each one sort of has its own special sauce or ways in which it approaches this question. So at the level of liberal arts, it's funny, in the morning session, I don't know if any of you were here, but the topic came up about whether there's a right size for a liberal arts education. And the person who asked the question noted that you can study the liberal arts at a small, fairly rural institution or at the University of Michigan, that they're all teaching liberal arts. So is there a right size? And when I listen to what you say is special about here, I think that's right. I think it is what's special about here. It's what's special and distinctive, and what brings it together is the combination of the size and the place, and then the fantastic people that are attracted here, and then the resources that are available to support them. And if you have all of those things together, you really can be the best because you're hitting above average on so many different areas. But I do think that all liberal arts colleges do aspire essentially to a similar goal, which is to teach students a series of competencies in which they're going to get better over the years that they study, in writing and critical thinking, we like to say, or deep reading, public speaking, research, problem solving, data analysis, through any number of subjects. And all the schools do that. And the question is the way in which they do that, and what makes a place like this so particularly rich. And that, I do think, is the size of the faculty as relative to the size of the undergraduate body, and the ability to have those one-on-one partnerships. A couple of you have heard me say, I think, that in my first visit here, I had lunch with some students, many of whom were seniors. And one of the things that was really fascinating to hear from them when I asked, what are you going to miss about Williams? They said lots of things as we went around the table. But a number of them said that they were going to miss faculty, their interactions with faculty, their courses. And tipping hat to my current institution, and hopefully this isn't being filmed, but I don't think as many students at Brown would say that, actually, on departure. And even though we also talk there about faculty-student relations, and I do think as the Ivies go, it celebrates that a bit, but it's just sort of the faculty-student ratio here is fantastic, and that allows. You
guys have a bigger log than we do.
We have it's a longer log, right? And that's and that doesn't mean beautiful relationships don't emerge, and that actually sometimes having grad students in the room is actually facilitates a wonderful, rich learning experience, but it's quite different. Yep. So that special sauce here of that student to faculty ratio and the ways in which they can get to know each other and work on solving problems and having undergraduates learning directly from faculty is really an unparalleled resource, actually.
I was going to add just that the resource intensiveness and the size of the faculty and the ratio that we talk about at Williams, it's not just the ratio, it's what the ratio allows us to do in the way that we teach, and it allows many wonderful things. It allows us to teach in a way that faculty would refer to as a very expensive way to teach. If you're trying to staff courses in your department, staffing tutorials is really not something that many institutions could aspire to do, frankly, because it's just really hard to teach in that intimate way and still cover the curriculum. So it's a very special thing that Williams has invested so significantly in this wonderful program that now spans every discipline. So it's not just history and English, but we have physics tutorials and math tutorials and art history tutorials, and in every discipline. Similarly, the kind of open-ended office hour time that many of my colleagues are very familiar with, the the one-on-one chances to interact casually with students and take time, and then the work that's the stuff that's not accounted for in the kind of accounting of what teaching is about and what those interactions about. I mean, that's the thing that this allows us to do, and then also to be able to be at a place where you do this intense teaching and you have those kind of very, very satisfying kinds of teaching experiences, but then you still have time to be really engaged scholars. And I just think it's again, speaking personally as a faculty member, it's the very thing that makes this really a very, very special job.
Thank you. So shifting a little bit now, we can't possibly cover all the issues that are in the headlines about higher education, but I'd like for you each to take a few minutes to share your take on the state of the campus climate here at Williams, or nationally, campus climates around.
Do you want to start?
You want me to go first? Pass that ball this way.
Who's brave?
We both have things to say.
Sure. I mean, campuses are rich microcosms of the world in which we live. And so there are always campus climate issues. And I sort of challenge everyone in the room to think back to your days in school and picture your president at the time on the stage, whoever that might have been, and imagine how that person might have answered this question. There are always issues. It always seems worse when you're off campus looking in than when you're actually on campus, I think. But if we think about the issues of our time right now, some of the issues that are affecting society at large are very much affecting our campuses. So we are becoming rightfully much more diverse spaces, but when you bring people together from a much more diverse set of backgrounds, by definition, there's going to be more sort of figuring each other out and trying to get to know each other, and that can cause sometimes conflict, or even, maybe that's not even the right word, different conversations than it had happened in the past, or they're happening in different ways. If we think about our kind of polarized political environment in the world, it's not surprising to find out that on campuses there are going to be charged political conversations that sort of mirror what's going on elsewhere. There was just a session on mental health issues on campuses. Again, these are issues that we're seeing in the larger society as well. So in some senses, they're microcosms, but in some ways I think they're telescoped, because we have a set of individuals on campuses who are just trying to figure out who they want to be. And a lot of the age of 18 to 21, again, think of yourselves, or maybe your best friend, or somebody else. But back at the time, you're sort of testing out who you want to be. So if you think about some of the activism on campus these days, for example, I just had a wonderful conversation with a Brown alum who engaged in a multi-day. So he's my age. I'll leave that to your imagination. He's my age. And he was telling me about a multi-day hunger strike he engaged in when he was on the Brown campus around divestment in South Africa in his day. And, he was telling it to me like a sort of fun, happy story from his past, right? It was a story, and we were talking about contemporary activism, but he was telling it in a way about sort of reflecting back on this time he did this thing, and what he learned, and what he accomplished, and what he didn't accomplish, and the risk he took, and what his mom thought, and, what the dean thought, and those kinds of conversations. You could see just in the conversation with him, he's grown up to be a very interesting lawyer, and who does a lot of work on all kinds of issues that are not directly related to that, but clearly came out of that experience, came out of that and many other experiences in his life. So I think I bring up that story just because I think that it is an example of the ways in which someone at this stage of life is really trying on a couple of ways of being, and sometimes that can cause discomfort for other folks, certainly off campuses, and even folks who sit in university halls and Hopkins halls to try and make sure that the place is running smoothly, and and in this day and age, of course, unlike when many of us were in school, the word gets out much faster. So everyone knows what's happening on campuses in a way that they didn't before. But actually, a lot of what we see these days, or some version of them, their own moments version, were actually happening at the time. So one can, and I'm happy in the question and answer period to talk about specific issues you're hearing about on campuses these days, but I think it's a broader point, really, I wanted to make about how in a sense, you want your campuses to be buzzing. You want them to be alive and buzzing, and struggling and arguing and working things out. Because if students are doing that, they're learning. And it's not always fun. I will admit it's not always fun to oversee it, but it is a sign that they are alive and vibrant and engaging with the issues of their times.
Thank you for that. That's really great insight. And I would just add that I think we've worked really hard at Williams to not only to kind of develop this sort of very sort of concerted strategy to seek a much more diverse student body, and frankly also to recruit a much more diverse faculty than was here at Williams a generation ago. And that is great work that involves, again, a lot of resources and a lot of vision. And we've made a lot of progress, with progress still to be made, but alongside with developing a more diverse community must come working on, you've created this wonderful environment where, in my opinion, you have the potential for conversations to be more complicated but more interesting, for problem solving and discussions and perspectives to be richer, solutions to be better. I firmly believe that this is in many ways, I know it sounds, you often hear this, but in a way we're really trying to model at Williams the world in which our students will live in. And in that world, it's a world of complicated conversations. It's a world where discussion across differences is just a fact of life. And so I really feel that we need to continue to work on having developing on campus ways to both support all populations of students as they come from very different backgrounds with very different familiarities, let's just say, with our institution and the world of Williams, but at the same time to promote because at its essence, we're trying to provide the best possible education for our students, and that can only happen if we do this hard work. Just on the as we just heard recently, in the last panel, I just want to also touch on the mental health issues here on this campus and everywhere in the country. And I just wanted to make the point that I also think of this a little bit through the lens of the kind of holistic education that we hope for our students, and that well-being as a concept and resiliency and the ability to have the perspective to help oneself and to take the time to think through complicated outcomes when things don't go the way we hope they did or the way they always did in high school. I think that something about the way we're trying to teach our students also can be thought of as, in a holistic sense, what we're also trying to help them with in the way they deal with these challenges of life, to come out of Williams as both smart and educated and curious people, but also resilient people who can handle complicated lives that they're likely to see in the future.
What are some of the, or who are some of the people, not the specific names, but who are some of the people, the roles that there are many, many that I know here at Williams who support students and who help them grow and help them be well, and who would you include in the? Yeah,
so I think it's a team approach, and I think often there are so many different groups on campus that interact with students in different ways. Often it's a faculty member who gets to know a student very well, but again, only through the lens of maybe one part of their lives at Williams. So, but often there can be great support from a faculty member, just exactly for the reasons we've been talking about the close relationships that are developed. But we also have a wonderful dean of the office of the dean of the college, with two wonderful new hires in that office very recently. We have a student life office, we have chaplains, we have Wendy Adam, who was here on stage just before us as our director of integrated well-being, and an amazing team. So there just are many, many different entities on campus, so that hopefully we have students who can seek and find and have partners of adults all over campus who interact with parts of their lives, perhaps no one of them with all parts of their lives. And then also I would just say peers, because so much of what Williams is about peer relationships and peer support.
And I would add, amongst the peers, the team captains and the coaches of the teams and the JAs and there's so much training and supporting of those people that's going on too.
Yeah, I mean, the thing, I think one of the things that most allows students to be successful, or those students who are the most successful, are those who are able to find a team of people who can support them for whatever their needs are, right? The ones who are able to ask questions and seek support when they need it. And these campuses are just replete with people who are essentially waiting to be asked or even going to seek students.
Actively seek.
Right, everything from coaches to professional staff in residence halls to folks who work in health services to religious leaders, you know, just in all kinds of areas in order to support student success. And I like the word resilience because it's really not just student success in the classroom, which we care about, but a broader sense that the whole student, the whole self is supported to be successful moving forward.
So thinking about campus climate from another perspective, you both have children who are heading to college this fall. Maud, your son Lev is headed to Brown, and Tiku, your daughter Leah, is joining Williams here.
Shocking.
So what's it like not to just be professors or administrators, but have that additional lens of a parent of a college student at institutions that you know really well?
So I just try to keep in mind that what I said before about testing out and trying out who you are, it applies to your own kids too, right? So, yeah, I mean, I think it's such a wonderful time of life. I mean, so many. Whenever I talk to alumni, one thing that many people say to me is, "Oh, if I could only just go back to college. If I could go back now." And actually, many of you do, I gather. There's a lot of folks who move back to Williamstown and take classes here. But you know, oh, if I knew then what I know now and what I would do differently, and I obviously totally get that. One of the great things about being a faculty member is you never leave campus, right? You live perpetually the age of from 18 to 21, year in and year out, over and over again. And you get to watch them go through this incredible adventure. It's such a privileged experience. That word came out earlier in one of the earlier sessions today. It's such a privilege to be able to go and spend 4 years to think nothing of yourself, but of yourself, actually, and of expanding your mind, and of experimenting and taking risks intellectually and just trying to sort of figure out who you are. That is an incredible privilege. So when I think about it from just, I've been watching it, I've been part of a community of learning for 20 years, but the idea that my own child is about to go off on this adventure, and I know you've had a few do this already, this is my first, I have a younger one who's following a few years later, but the fact that I have one who's about to go off on this venture, I'm a little jealous. Like it's just such a great time, and I'm so excited for him. I will say that after I got this job, he was starting to wonder why he wasn't coming here. That's how, but I don't think it's great to go where your mom is president. That's not so good. So we're still in the honeymoon period, but you know, so it's good he's going there, and I think it's a really good fit for him in lots of ways.
Great.
And my daughter Leah made sure before she pressed the button, which was May 1st, which by the way is the deadline for those
that you would be back in the
that
classroom.
I would be back in the classroom,
right.
Or maybe slightly more incognito in my lab, and that was a prerequisite. I think. When I did the previews for accepted students this year, she was in the audience, and I think she thought to herself, okay, it can't be like this if I'm going to come here. Right? But it is. We're really excited. She's the third of our 3 children. The first 2 were twins who were born the very fall that I arrived at Williams. So I look at them and I can tell how long I've been here. So it's really. They're 23 now. They grew up here, took classes at Williams as seniors from some of my most favorite and wonderful colleagues, and had this great experience, and went off to other institutions. And there was a phone call at some point that was like, you know, Dad, my teachers, they don't really care in the same way that when I remember in my classes at Williams. And I was like, well, that's a choice you made. They had wonderful I did not say that as a parent. That would not be, no. I figured that they had wonderful experiences at 2 nearby New England institutions. And,
that shall remain unnamed.
Well, yes. And they did have wonderful experiences. But it is interesting that Leah has kind of watched all that and come all the way
She's made
back.
really good choices.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. So we're really excited to have her, especially since it makes us only partial empty nesters, I guess that would be.
Come home to do the laundry.
Yeah, something like that, I guess.
And congratulations, because tomorrow is Leah's graduation, and Tiku will not be with us at the annual meeting tomorrow in the LaSalle gym because he will be at Leah's graduation, so he definitely has his priorities straight. So being a college president is a hard life choice with all the travel and the stress, all of these many issues that we've talked about and the long hours. And you guys each have your own ways of dealing with that, I imagine. So how do you maintain your own personal bubble and identity and decompress? You first.
I would say, so I've had a 6-month window into this, and I would say that part of this is I haven't perhaps had to pace myself in quite the same way that a 10-year presidency, one would have to think about that. But I have to say that one of the lovely things that has worked out for me and my family is that my wife and daughter were able to travel when we went on alumni trips this semester, several trips, and even though there was a lot of business and a lot of work, it was just really grounding to have the family there. And I do think that Leah, hearing me say the same, she could practically give my little 15-minute remark speech by the end of it, and I think that maybe had some small effect on her college. I don't know, but that was very wonderful, and I just also think that that for me, being able to get out of Hopkins Hall and have the opportunity to be part of the community was very rejuvenating. So lots of meetings and lots of important business and complicated conversations, but being able to go to a concert or a sporting event or just wander back to my lab and see my colleagues and talk to them about what they were up to was even just in small doses was really, really important. Not to mention what we heard about wellness before, about making sure you remember to get some sleep and exercise.
Yeah, that's very important. Yeah, it's funny. I was just thinking about the question and thinking the truth is I don't find these jobs stressful in the way I think we mean when we ask that question, and I think I was trying to decide why, and it's not that it doesn't mean every day doesn't have challenges. Of course, there are challenges, but I think it's because what draws me to this work is that I really like people, and this is a very people-facing job, right? So the way I recuperate when I'm feeling challenged is I like to go talk to people, and that's what I do for the job. So it sort of works together. I think that that we all do have self-care strategies that we engage in when we're tired. One of the things I like to do, we've talked about before, is I'm a big walker and actually love to walk in cities, but here I have found all the beautiful countryside to walk in as well. And just to sort of take in the energy of the place where I'm living. In cities, it's obviously the energy of the people and from all the different walks of life that you see. And here is the beauty of the natural world around us. So that's something that I certainly do when I'm feeling like I need to refill my tank. But mostly it's family and friends and community, and when your family and friends and community make up the place that you're working, that actually helps mitigate the stress, I think, because we're all in it together. So we're working together to figure out the solutions, and I find that I think being in conversations with those people is actually a helpful way to solve the problems that are causing whatever stress you're experiencing.
So on the Presidential Search Committee, we were very specific about one of our questions, and the word revel was used in the question, and how will you revel in this job? And Maud loved that we used the word revel, and she said, well, actually, I do revel in this job, just as she said today. And
I did say that, but I made a joke about it, which is, what I said was, I can't think of too many college presidents who would say that they revel in their job. It was a very funny question, because it is considered to be such a stressful job. But and I don't mean to diminish that. I mean, I don't mean to suggest that there aren't really, really hard challenges, but it's just, there's something about colleges and universities which just attract so many smart, engaged people who care about the community, and even if you disagree with them and how to solve a particular problem, the energy that's coming to try to solve that problem is coming from the right place. So folks are in it together, and sometimes they don't even realize that, that they're in it together, but that's where the revelry comes from, understanding that really everyone who's part of this community, and I think it's particularly true of a place like Williams, has the best interests of the institution at heart, even if you don't agree with how that looks. In fact, they're all coming from that same place, and that brings a lot of joy to the work, which is knowing that in the end, what we all want is the same thing: for the institution to thrive, for the students to thrive, for the institution to be the very best institution it can be, and to hit its highest aspirations.
And I'm going to say something about Leah, too, because what you're talking about relationships with each other and relationships with the place and really caring about that. So Leah came with her parents on our January off-site executive committee meeting of the Society of Alumni and got to know the whole group of us. And when she was accepted to Williams, wrote me the most lovely email that said that in addition to many other things about Williams, one of the things that she had really come to appreciate was the alumni body and our relationships with each other and our dedication and passion for the college. So that's all of you guys. So thank you. And it shows. It does. So, Maud, what are some of the things you're looking forward to in coming here? And have you any surprises or discoveries so far about Williams or Williamstown, our traffic lightless place?
I've been here, I think, 4 times since the announcement. The first time, it was in April, and it was, I think, still snowing. And then I came back in May, and I think it might have been still snowing. But the last 2 visits, last weekend and this weekend, were just exquisitely beautiful. And I have to say, there were 2 times when I actually found myself saying, I get to live here. This is where I live now. This is amazing. So what I'm looking forward to is, one of the things I'm looking forward to beyond the sort of obvious things we've already talked around the job is just waking up every morning and looking at those mountains outside my window and walking out into the...
And they really are purple sometimes.
Sometimes, and they're whatever color, stunning and peace-inducing and really, really wonderful. And just enjoying the incredible natural beauty that is this place. So I really am looking forward to that and to my long rural walks now in the country.
And living in Sloan House.
Yeah. I am looking forward to living in Sloan House, yes. It is, we're not quite in yet in a couple of weeks, but and as far as this is a funny thing to say as a surprise, but and it certainly isn't probably a surprise to any of you, but people are really nice here. So I'm not sure I expected the opposite. That's why I say it's a funny thing to say.
You have to be, because you can't get away from people if you're not.
Yeah. But folks have been so welcoming and warm and kind, and not just to me, but to my husband and to my kids, and really going out of their way to help us feel part of this community, because it is an insular community, and so when you come in from the outside, you're outside of it. But folks have not let that stand and have been really, welcoming us as part of the community, and that's again, maybe surprise isn't the right word, but it's such a pleasant way to enter into this role.
Great. Do you guys have any last thoughts or comments before we open it up to questions?
I think so. I want to say thanks to the institution that I thought I knew so well for the opportunity to do this very special temporary thing, and I'm really, really looking forward to going back to my life as a professor, and also with such a richer, deeper knowledge of the institution, of all of you and the role that you play, and it will, as I work on continuing to produce alums like you, it'll be even more of a privilege for me.
Well, and I think I would just follow up to say it's been wonderful to work with you to get to know this place a little bit. Tiku's been incredibly helpful, and luckily is not going very far away, as we've talked about. So we'll continue to be a helpful resource. But one of the things that's special about this place is the way faculty play a very engaged role in the administration of the institution, in all of the senior deans and provostial roles. It's faculty, only the president comes from outside, and in this instance, the president wasn't even from the outside. And so my onboarding is much easier because I have such wonderful colleagues to work with, and particularly Tiku, so I'm very grateful for that.
Great. Thank you both.